Welcome in for another episode of the Vitamin C's podcast, proud part of the CLNS Media Network. I'm your host, Tim Shields, and I'm joined by my co-host, Wayne Breezy Brown. Today, we're looking at July 3rd. Hopefully, going to get this episode out today because there's plenty of stuff going on, and we'll get into that in a moment. Wayne, how are we doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Things are going well. The summer's officially here. It's officially hot on the East Coast. The humidity's in the air, and it's about time for us to act like we're miserable folk over here on the East Coast. So if you get a little attitude from us, it's because the humidity is out and pumping.
Yeah, every day I ask myself, why am I so sticky? That's what it feels like, man. You start to get like the stickiness on the back of the knees.
Yep.
That's how you know how summer's really arrived. It's really when you start sticking to pleather. But besides the weather and the heat and how disgustingly sweaty we might get, it's the start of free agency, essentially. Starting on June 30th, we've seen some moves happen. For the Celtics specifically, right off the bat, they've made a couple nice moves. Small moves, but moves that kind of give an idea of what the long-term plan is, at least for the next couple years. Kristaps Porzingis, they inked to a 2-year, $60 million extension. Big thing with that is that they saved about $17.5 million. So KP absolutely took a pay cut with that, and that's great for the Celtics. It means two things. One, he's fully invested in what this team can do, and two, it gives them a little bit of flexibility in terms of how they're looking at the financial landscape. You've seen some guys take some pay cuts. Domantas Sabonis inked a big extension with the Kings, took a little bit of a pay cut. So want to see how that kind of affects how other guys approach this moving forward. They also signed Oshae Brissett. He's a wing, 6'7", I believe. Just turned 25 in June, and he was, if you don't know him, go back and watch the Pacers versus Celtics game because he ended up hitting like 6 threes against them, and he looked pretty good doing it. So that's what I remembered him from previously with the Toronto Raptors. And most recently, news broke today that the Celtics came to terms with Dalano Banton. He plays with originally was with the Raptors. They did not sign his qualifying offer, so he hit free agency. But both him and Brissett signed for 2-year contracts, which I found to be interesting. And this is a big guy. He's technically a point guard. 6'7" listed on Wikipedia. I've heard he's 6'9" on Twitter, so I don't know if that's shoes on, shoes off, post-draft growth.
There's got to be some thick soles.
Yeah, I don't know, man. But
2 inches.
They started doing that recently. The past few years, they started doing measurements without shoes on because guys were lying about their height. KG's talked about this before. KD talked about this as well. Durant notoriously lied about his height, so he didn't get forced to play center at the NBA level. But Banton is interesting. 23 is going to be 24 in November. He's huge for a point guard, and it makes you wonder what else is going. But before we get into the what ifs of that, what do you think of these moves so far? They're minor, I know, but I like them so far.
I mean, the Celtics are looking for ways to bolster up their roster and bringing guys, probably young guys, like they're keeping the team young and keeping the team fresh. And they're going to compete against some of these younger guys that we have on the squad. Summer ball's around the corner, and we're going to see what it's like to bring in some of these young guys to see what they can add to the team, who can stand out. Will they be able to I guess mix and kind of like mingle with the core of the team? And I think that these pieces are just extra pieces to add. What are we going to get from these guys? I'm not really sure. I mean, like they don't have a lot of well, I would say Brissett has a little bit more history as far as experience in the NBA. When I'm looking at his stats and I saw what he was able to do, some of his highlights and things like that. I mean, he seems like he's a person that can be one of those kind of like gritty type of players and do some things, for the Celtics to keep plays and stuff alive. And then when you look at the young kid in Banton, this is a tall point guard, right? So 6'7" or 6'9", it doesn't matter. Like this kid is tall for a point guard, period. Like that's length, that's size, that's kind of what the Celtics are looking to do. They're looking to bully up these younger, quicker point guards because there are a few. The Celtics have to deal with the Knicks guys and some of these other teams where they got those young, quick guys, and we're looking to get body. And again, this kind of fits that, length type of situation we were talking about on the other show. Like, look, guys are playing these passing lanes. You go ahead and try to pass these balls. These guys got these lengths and their arm lengths, their wingspans. They're going to try to, deflect these passes. and create turnovers and get easy buckets in transition. So I like what the Boston Celtics are doing as far as adding some of these type of players. Will they make this, will they be as far as, what's the word? Will they be prominent
Difference
on?
makers.
Yeah, like will they
Yeah,
be? I
yeah.
don't know, but if they can give you 1 game, 2 games, 3 games where they are the difference maker, I think that's what the Celtics kind of like need to get over, this hump. And we'll see. Again, young depth. I'm only curious about people's health and how well they can come in here and can they be healthy and give us healthy stints of basketball and things like that. Because it seems like for the Boston Celtics, they always get to the finish line, but they can't ever finish. And it's not because of skill set. It's not because of lack of defense. It's not because of lack of hustle. It's not because their 3-pointers aren't always falling. It's because they end up getting injured.
And it's inevitability, right?
Right. Like it's every year.
Every
the
year, man.
injury.
I don't think there's been a single team that's like gone through without getting some kind of injury luck, whether it's
I agree.
Look at the Raptors run too, right? Like the Raptors going against Golden State in the finals, Golden State dealing with all of the injuries they had. I mean, like, I guess from the perspective of teams that are winning and end up winning championships, you have to kind of find ways to avoid those injury issues down the line.
It's the timing for us, bro.
It's timing and it's like the depth, right? It's like you want to be able to give guys more rest. And I think what the common trend is for the Celtics for the past few seasons is they haven't had a lot of regular season bodies to eat minutes. I think Brissett gives you that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know a lot about Banton, but you're going to be able to give these guys some minutes. I guess my question is the timing of everything. So we already know that Malcolm Brogdon was supposed to be traded to the Clippers. As part of that Kristaps Porzingis deal. That fell through because of not being able to get a physical done on time for Brogdon, so the Clippers kind of moseyed on out of that. Now it looks like the Clippers are re-engaging in talks with Brogdon. I don't know where those are going. There's not been a lot of talk on it. It's just interesting, funky stuff going on. I mean, Porzingis obviously signed that extension. You landed him in Boston. Now it's kind of like, what's the next big shoe to drop? I know Adam Himmelsbach of Boston Globe wrote a piece talking about the Celtics kind of having this treasure trove of picks again, where they've got control of all of these first rounders. They added more picks, a bunch of second rounders, some sweeteners, and then they got that Golden State pick for next season. We've already talked about the protections on it and stuff, but all likelihood that pick is going to convey next year, barring some insane dropout. But the Celtics are positioned with assets and contracts to make things happen. And they went out and they added another guard. Now, like, does Banton slide to your fourth guard spot, where now you've got Brogdon, you've got Derek White, you've got JD Davison? Is he going to stay on a two-way, or you're going to upgrade him? You've got, you got to think about Peyton Pritchard.
Pritchard,
Peyton Pritchard.
yeah.
Is Pritchard now your guard off the bench? It really depends on how they go about their starting lineup, but it does feel odd when you think about the grand scheme of things, right? Because the thing we got to chew our teeth into is the Dame Lillard stuff, because whether we think it's good or not, Dame Lillard's on the market. And it feels like as soon as that stuff happened, as soon as Dame news came out on Saturday, we heard nothing new, really. There was a couple minor moves here and there, guys signing extensions, but
it's like the bigger moves got put on hold.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
And for the Boston Celtics, I mean, to find out that they're making calls. They're one of the teams, which I feel like, I mean, there's not that many teams making calls for Dame, but the fact that the Celtics are one of those teams, that throws kind of like a little, I don't know if it's a good wrinkle or a bad wrinkle, but it kind of throws a wrinkle in the game plan, because now it makes me curious to know, well, if they get Dame, are they going to have to move Brown?
And that's the tricky question, right? So Crispy Haynes is the first one who came out with the report saying that Lillard was requesting out. He's kind of been really, really close with Dame, actually, and Dame has said as much on like Instagram Live and everything. He said this weeks back, but they have got a close relationship. Haynes is very tied in, but Woj also had it as well following that. Miami's been named the destination that he wants to go to. But this is a different situation than what happened with Kristaps Porzingis, where he had an opt-in and he got to kind of be like, all right, well, I'm going to opt in if you send me to this team. And the Wizards sort of had their hands tied. And then you look at the situation with Beal where he had a no trade clause, which is a rarity in the modern NBA. He was able to say, I want to go to this team. This is where I want to go. I will waive my no trade clause and my trade kicker to go there. And they made that happen. For the Celtics now, to get in on this Beal stuff, or to get in on this Dame Lillard stuff, they might not have to give up Brown, but if they do, they're going to by far have the best offer on the table. You do have to look at the long view of it because of the money. This new CBA is going to punish anyone who tries to trade for Dame without like giving a major salary. And that's the tricky part, right? And from a Celtics perspective, as soon as you ink Jaylen Brown to an extension, that basically takes him off the table in an ACON trade. So I don't think that happens. But the fact that hasn't happened is weird. The fact that we haven't heard really any news on Jaylen Brown, even just like loose terms, because they can sign it wherever. People are like, well, he's in Europe right now, or he was in Saudi Arabia briefly. All of that stuff, they can do it online. Like that.
Absolutely.
That's not stopping them from either agreeing to terms or putting pen to paper. So like, I don't think that's the holdup. But it's been eerily quiet around the Celtics. This Banton move, okay. Other than that, what else have we seen? It's like nothing. It's a ghost town out there right now.
Well, the Celtics made it evident that they're looking to try to get this, Jaylen Brown deal done, right? That's something that they want to do as a team, as an organization. And I don't think it's I think it's kind of like on Brown right now, right? I think he's kind of like just at that point where he's just taking this well-deserved break and he's going to break. And I need the Celtics nation to like respect the break, because it's a mental thing, right? And I know it's tough because we want to build our team and we want to know how we're going to be looking going forward. And I know it's hard, but from the vitamin C crew, just allow them to break. I guarantee things are being talked about and it's just going to take a little time. And give it the time because we want the deal to be right. I know a lot of fans don't want him to be the highest paid player like in the NBA, but listen,
it won't be for long.
It won't be for long. I mean, it just won't be for long, guys. It's the way of the world and the NBA. It's the way the salary cap is now. The NBA is worth so much more money. It's not like how it was. I just saw an Instagram post of LaMelo Ball's contract. And how he's making probably almost 4 times what Michael Jordan's salary was. And there's no way in hell of heavens, on earth, and anywhere else is he a better player than Michael Jordan, but it's the new NBA. Like, you get what I'm saying? So, like...
It's all relative to what the salary cap is.
It's just relative. So I just want people to understand that because I know a lot of fans, I don't want to make him the highest paid player. He's not even the best player. It doesn't matter. Like, the Celtics have the opportunity to offer him the super max. He made the All-NBA. The second team is All-NBA player. They're going to offer him whatever that number is. His agents have to agree on that number. And once that number is agreed, the deal will get done. But in the meantime, I'm just more focusing on who we have and how we're going to build from that. I believe in my heart that the Jaylen Brown deal will get done. As far as this Dame stuff, interesting for me because I'm just like, well, if you don't have to move Brown, are you moving Brogdon, maybe Pritchard, and a couple of first-round picks? I mean, is that...
So the tough thing is the salary, right? And this is where if you try to trade for Dame without giving up a significant piece, like you are screwing yourself salary-wise because
Dame is 30.
So he's 32. He'll be 33.
But what's his salary for this year? Is it? It's not in the 40s, right?
Earlier. I still got the window up because I wrote a piece about this earlier for Celtics blog.
Look at you.
Just aggregating stuff because B-Rob had some good stuff on it too. And if I could pull up some bits from that. No, he's not getting paid in the 30s this year. He's getting 45.64. So 45.6 million, almost.
Okay. Wait a minute. We have to play the game because Brogdon's salaries is not even 30. So that
22.5.
That's not even close to 30.
It's multiple pieces. So this is the thing: is it would be If it's not Jaylen Brown, these are a couple of the deals that he put together. And by he, I mean B-Rob. And if you haven't read this piece, you should. Great work by him.
Shout
So
out to
Brian Robb
B-Rob.
proposed. I love B-Rob. I'm always going to talk about B-Rob. So it
Gotta
was
get him on the show.
Brogdon. I can see what I can do. So it was Malcolm Brogdon. It was Peyton Pritchard, Luke Cornett.
Oh, it's multiple players.
It has to be multiple players just because of the way that the deal is structured. Just because the biggest thing is the contract matching, right?
Correct.
Because you can't take on any more money. If you trade for him now, you have to somehow manage this cap situation because you have to go underneath that second apron. You can't get pushed over it because then you start triggering some of the potential penalties.
Correct.
Yeah, so here it is. And you probably aren't going to like this. This is one of the offers that he put together.
Sugar.
So it's Brogdon, Peyton, Luke, Robert Williams, salary fillers. So that would probably be like Champagne or something like that. 3 future first-round picks and additional picks / swaps or second-round picks for Dame Lillard. That's what a deal would look like. That's one of the other ones. Another one would be Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White, 3 first-round picks, 3 future first-rounders. Or it's a offer 3 that he had was a 3-team trade involving Jaylen Brown going to a different destination.
See,
now,
I'm not feeling B or C.
no one's ever feeling B or C. Like I get that.
But A is interesting. Go back to that option A.
Okay.
Robert Williams. Who were the other people?
Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, Peyton Pritchard, Luke Cornett, and then probably some kind of filler contract around $1 million or so. That's what it would take to make that deal go through in terms of what the salary is right now. So that would be most likely it'd be like a guy like Champagne, where it's just a throw in, sort of like what happened when they traded for Brogdon, where they threw in like Nick Stauskas, where it's clearly just money.
Right. So I mean, I wouldn't oppose to that. If that's what the Celtics offered. I'm not saying that the Trailblazers would take that deal. If I'm the Trailblazers, I may not take that deal. It's not the deal I would want because, but then again, if they're they just drafted this young phenom.
Yeah, they got Scoot Henderson. They've already got Anthony Simons.
They got Simon. Is it time to move on from Dame and then let them? So do they want the supplemental pieces, the role-playing pieces, the NBA 6 man of the year, like that, like those type of prominent pieces? Maybe that's what they're looking for because they got Anthony Simmons maybe budding into one of the next NBA's all-star, superstar type of players, and then you got this young kid who is gonna come in and probably, light the league on fire. Mm-hmm. Probably though, we don't know. So I mean that they may entertain that deal. But it all depends on what the hell these other teams are going to offer. So, like, if I'm the Celtics, I may offer deal A. But now my question is this, right? We get Dame. Say it happens. Like, how does Dame make the Boston Celtics better?
I mean, for one, you have to account for him on offense. He's an incredible 3-point shooter. He's
from anywhere on the court, too, by the way.
I mean, how many other shooters can you put above him besides Steph?
I'm with you.
And that's really what it is he's an insane shooter. In terms of contested 3-point shooters, his shooting percentage is like off the charts. Obviously, incredible offensive talent, capable of creating for others. Is one of those guys, again, that takes some of the playmaking pressures off of a guy like Jayson Tatum or Jaylen Brown if he's still here. And it balances your roster out if you were to, let's say, move on from a guy like... if you move on from Jaylen Brown, I mean, it gives you an opportunity to balance your roster. I don't think they offer Jaylen Brown unless they have to. And I think that's okay. I think that's something that's totally expected and fair when you're looking at what other teams can offer. I think Tyler Herro would be a piece that they would get from Miami if that were to happen. And
interesting.
They would probably have to reroute into a different team, and it would be the same thing if they did that with Jaylen Brown. I think Jaylen Brown would get rerouted because they're going to be in a rebuild. Now, if they were to give that offer A that Byron Robb was talking about, at least you could try and flip Brogdon down the line for other pieces. There's definitely going to be someone who's going to be interested in him.
Heck yeah.
So, that's the thing. and you're getting a guy like Peyton Pritchard, who's from Oregon, played for the Oregon Ducks. You know, he still loves to play in Portland whenever he can. Obviously, we know that he played at the Portland AM basketball competition before and scored like an insane amount of points. But it it's the picks that make a difference here. And Portland has made clear, Wojnarowski said as much too, Woj reported on this, they're not going to just take Miami's deal because that's where Dame wants to go. This is the opportunity. This is like a big franchise trade. This is a franchise altering trade. You're giving up the face of the franchise that's been with you guys for over a decade. You have to hit on that trade. You can't settle in order to make him happy. You can try to be accommodating, and I think they'll do that the best that they can, but they have to get the most out of this deal. So if there's a trade with Miami, it's going to need to involve a third team where some of these assets might get dumped off to.
Dumped.
They're not going to be able to just trade away like Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson and filler and picks to go get Dame Lillard. It's just not going to happen, because if you're Portland, you can't settle for that. You just can't.
I mean, and I guess my other question is, you know, with Dame, and you gave all these great things about him and what he can do. Like, will that take away from, you know, what the team is looking to, will that take away from the Jays? Because I'm believing that the Jays will remain here in Boston. I think that those are your pillars. You build around them. I feel like for the Celtics, if they can find a way to acquire a piece like Dame, then they'll go for it. Like, why not? That's what this league is all about. You take your shot. You shoot your shots. You get it. You get it. If you don't, you're happy. You're content and happy where you are. But obviously, you would be dumb not to go for that shot. But does he take away from that? And you talked about how he adds and things like that. But I'm talking about as far as like, these kids are coming into their prime. And so like Jaylen Brown already wants the ball. Tatum wants the ball. How do you think that might change it up a little bit if he is here?
I don't think it'll change too much with what Tatum's doing. I think the two-man game will be fine, because I think if you're doing a two-man game between Tatum and Lillard, it's a whole different situation.
Oh my gosh.
Because we saw what they were able to do when Kyrie was here and everything was groove and everything. When everything was clicking, and that was great. But since then, Tatum's obviously physically changed. He's added on a lot of muscle. He's added more wrinkles to his game.
And his
He's
game
much
got
more
better.
Way better, and he's a more complete player. Now, for adding Kristaps Porzingis to the formula, you're adding someone who's able to operate from the elbows, so you're going to have the ability to score at every level. You've got the mid-range, you're going to have the post there, you're obviously going to have the three ball, and if you're going to be a team that's so reliant on the three-point shot, adding a guy like Lillard makes a lot of sense because he's an elite three-point shooter. Now, I will also say, and this was part of the B-Rob piece because Mark J. Spears reported this, Mark J. Spears of ESPN and Andscape, he reported that Tatum was trying to recruit Lillard. Now, I don't think that this is necessarily signaling that Brown is gone or anything like that, but right now it seems like the team's trying to preserve any and all flexibility. So, like, Brown hasn't signed a contract yet. Again, as soon as Brown signs an extension, he comes off the table for any kind of trade talk. So I just find that part interesting. And the fact that Tatum is going out of his way to recruit, they understand like what they have to do now. I think the Celtics know, and I think Brad Stevens knows, that you're not guaranteed anything in the NBA. These championship windows, they're not guaranteed. They're not guaranteed by any means. So you have to structure your team and your roster, especially with this new CBA in mind. And I keep going back to that because
it's changing everything.
It's going to change everything. And I mean, you're seeing a lot of guys. I mentioned Sabonis, but there's plenty of other guys who are taking less money in order to try and make sure their teams are better. Grant Williams, when talking to the public, talking about signing an extension or signing a new deal with the Celtics, because he's a restricted free agent. They tendered a qualifying offer to him. There's been murmurs of other teams like the Mavericks and the Hornets having interested in him. But there's been no deals or offers that have come out about that yet. But he's also understanding that, hey, because of this new CBA that me, as one of the members of the Players Union, agreed to, we now have a different salary sheet to work with, which means that it might change my number at the end of the day. I might have to take a whole lot less than I was hoping for because the money that these teams are going to be trying to spend needs to be allocated properly. And that doesn't mean like you're seeing some guys get crazy money. You're seeing some guys get stupid money. Like The funny thing was like Twitter was crap in the bed, and then I started to see some of these Rockets moves, and some of them I'm like,
Oh
that's a
yeah.
really solid move. Like Fred VanVleet, that's a good amount of money, but like that's a good signing. And then I missed like the part where they traded like KJ Martin for like pennies, and then they gave like a massive contract to Dylan Brooks, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm gonna rescind that tweet that I was like, your Rockets are making solid moves. I like deleted that tweet so quickly, but some guys are gonna get dumb money, some guys are gonna be fine. Some teams are going to say screw the cap and they're going to deal with the repercussions later
And pay the
but
penalties.
yeah, but it prevents you from a lot of different stuff. So from like the Celtics perspective, because they're trying to contend for a championship, they're being really, really wary of that second apron. So if they can get Jaylen Brown to agree to less than the supermax, and I don't know if they can, but if that's an option and that's why they haven't had him extend yet, who knows? But
Do you think that? See, that's the players. I've had this argument, and this came up in the argument. Tatum and Brown should take less money. Now, see, I get that. At a certain point, though, because you're asking these young men that work their ass off to get this supermax deal to take less money. The players you mentioned and the players that this particular person mentioned at the time, they were kind of like players that were kind of like in their tenure of basketball. Like they were still great. They still could produce, but they probably had got their supermax already, right? Like they were on that next tier. Like you just mentioned Sabonis. I feel like Brown and Tatum haven't experienced that, but do you feel maybe they should take less than this supermax deal that's going to come up to make this team that dynamic? Because I don't remember Curry. I don't remember any of these other players.
Durant did. Durant took a pay cut when he went to Golden State. So
okay,
and like that's the thing is like
but
I think it's
was that
situations,
that's not his super? But he had made his supermax already, right? And OKC.
Yeah, so he had the ability to sign. This is before the Supermax extension actually existed.
Okay, so see how it's different. My bad, yo. So like I get it. Like it's these new rules. They keep changing on us. And so like with this new apron you're talking about and this new CBA, it's making the Supermax weird. And I get it. It's just crazy.
The Supermax was originally intended to allow teams like smaller market teams like say perhaps the Milwaukee Bucks.
Bucks, okay.
Yeah, like the Milwaukee Bucks to keep guys like Giannis. And it allowed, guys to go over the cap and pay the maximum amount of money. So if there was a player, like a superstar player that played for a team like Minnesota or Utah, they would be able to pay them that big contract. They wouldn't be able to get that money anywhere else. So it was supposed to be a financial incentive to keep guys. But now it almost feels like with this new CBA, you're going to have to limit how many of those supermax contracts you can give out.
Bingo.
And, like with Sacramento, like Sabonis taking even just a partial pay cut, wherever the amount is, because I don't know what it was off the top of my head, he still took a pay cut. If you can get Brown to do that, great. If you can get Tatum to do that, great. I don't expect either of them to do that, but you never know. I won't sit here and pretend to know what they're thinking, but they know that they've got something special here, and I don't think...
I agree.
I don't know. It's tricky to say what's going to happen with JB. I just have the feeling that something is cooking, and I don't know if it means that JB is going to be here long term or not. Okay. I just find it so weird that we haven't heard anything.
Nothing.
Not even like, really the only thing we heard was Himmelsback being like, they're not really in a rush to get any deals done. They really haven't discussed any terms. Like nothing, and it's weird only because they've had so long to talk about it and to figure it out. And we know ultimately what that final figure could be. So the fact that they haven't done that is just weird. Unless they're planning something else that we don't even see coming. Like it's just going to come from the top rope out of nowhere.
See, I don't know if I label it as it being weird when things are changing and shifting. We just talked about a whole bunch of different scenarios and the way the new CBA is going to hit and how these supermaxes are probably going to work going into the near future. This might not even last long, but going into this season, this is how it is, right? And then this new CBA. But what if that's the holdup? What if the language and that is the holdup? And then what if they are asking Brown, listen, Brown, we got a chance to get Lillard, this guy, and then we'll have the super team if you're willing to take less. Now, I'm not saying he won't. I think you said it best. Like, I just don't expect these guys to do that. But if they did that, it'd be a great thing. Because I can tell you this right now. Let's say Jaylen Brown doesn't and whatever, and we don't win the next year, and then Tatum does it, and we add another. There's going to be a whole nother story on Brown not doing what's best for the team and Tatum doing it. It's never ending. I swear, I pick the teams with the drama. That's just how I am. It's how it is. But it's just, I just feel like we got to be fair to these guys. They work their behinds off to get to this point in their career. And I don't think as a regular person, we really know what it takes for them to get to that level. It takes it takes team, it takes hard work, it takes like practice. It just takes a lot. And so you gotta expect them to accept that payday if they earned it. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I'm saying. If he takes less, man, Jaylen Brown high fives all around, because that means that. But I tell you what, if he does take less, the Celtics better make sure that plan and getting whoever that other player is intact, because that will piss Brown all the way off.
Yeah, again, I don't think, regardless of what moves might come, if they're making a big splash, they'll definitely do it before any kind of extension would happen with JB, as long as it's not like an outgoing piece. That's just realistically what I think, just because they've already got him under contract, so we'll see what happens with it. But again, it just feels like there's so much uncertainty. Like I'm going to get this episode out so fast because I just think that something else is going to happen, and I just don't know when. So
Let's
it's like,
get it out.
Everything else is on pause right now across the NBA until this Lillard situation gets solved. But, I mean, we'll see what happens with that.
Quick percentage before we jump off here. Damian Lillard to the Celtics. What is your percentage off the top? I'm at a 25% type.
I was
going to
say I'm probably at like 30%.
Damn, you're higher than me.
Yeah, not by much, because I just don't. I think they've got the best offer, and the fact that there's nothing going on with Jaylen and we haven't heard anything about it just makes it just like a little fishy. Because even if it were a situation where he's not getting dealt to the Blazers, like I could see a third team getting involved in being it like Atlanta and sending him to hit
Brown
Atlanta,
to Atlanta,
where he would definitely re-sign because, in terms of the assets and picks, I mean, it just would make sense. But
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
With that, we'll wrap up for today. This has been the Vitamin C's podcast, proud part of the CLNS Media Network. We'll probably catch up with you guys as soon as we hear any more big news. But until then, stay frosty. Cheers.
Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and make every moment more on America's #1 sportsbook.